Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Sarah Broughton. I am the AIA Colorado West Director and Principal of Rowland Broughton Architecture, Urban Design, and Interior Design based in Aspen and in Denver. And I'm really excited to be here today with this amazing panel of colleagues that are representing many parts of our section. I was just saying before we went live with you all that the West is a special place, as we all know, with quarantine and with a global pandemic. It's a pretty amazing place to be, quote unquote, stuck. So we have a lot to be thankful for, but these are challenging times. And so it's really a great opportunity to get together and speak amongst our peers in the West specifically, and discuss some of the opportunities and challenges that we have been facing over the last 3 months. So with us today, we have Justin Rounsefell, and Justin, hi Justin. He is principal of Stratus Group based in Carbondale. And Justin has been working, he's part of the section activity group on this town hall here today. So Justin, thanks for all your hard work. And Justin is going to be leading the panel discussion. We have David Kaselak. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good.
Dave is in Avon. He's with Zehren Associates, and you've been with Zehren since 1995. So I'm really excited to speak with you today about what you're seeing with your firm. We have Matt Stais with Stais Architecture in Frisco, and Matt has a 6-person firm that he started in Breckenridge. It's now based in Frisco in 1995. So Matt, great to see you today. We have John Cottle. Hey, John.
Hello,
John is badass with CCY, FAIA, based in Basalt. Always like our conversations, John. So how long have you been part of CCY?
Oh, my Lord. Long time.
Okay. Good answer. So thanks for being here today. We have Sarah Tiedeken, and she is a partner of Vertical Arts in Steamboat Springs. Hi, Sarah.
Hi there.
You've been with the firm since 2011, and now partner and Steamboat Vertical Arts. So you're in the Steamboat Springs studio, but you also have studios in the Vail Valley and Denver.
Yep.
And last but not least, we have Dana Ellis. Dana is a studio leader with Rowland Broughton, based in the Aspen studio, currently working out of her Carbondale home. Hi, Dana. Thanks for being here today. And Dana has been with Rowland Broughton for the last 13 years and was actually hired during the last recession. So has a lot to offer for the conversation about being resilient during these turbulent cycles that we go through. So a few announcements. I just was in our state AIA board meeting all day, and we are gearing up for a town hall that's going to be happening on July 22nd. That's a Wednesday, and it's going to be from 4 to 5:30. And in that town hall, we will be discussing the values and core focuses that we have been outlining for the state AIA, and also the imperatives that we have created as goals. And it just as a little sneak peek, those 3 imperatives are the culture of belonging. So that includes section structure, bylaws, and increased communication, which hopefully you've been seeing already. Environmental stewardship, which is something that we are aligning with AIA National, and the JEDI, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity. And obviously that could not be more pertinent than it is today. So really we are positioning ourselves to help our members and our colleagues with these 3 imperatives. So please tune in. There will be an invite going out for that town hall again on July 22nd from 4 to 5:30. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Justin.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And we're eager to get to the discussion, which is the real point that we're all here, but I have a couple quick logistics things to go over with everybody. This session will be recorded, so if you have someone else in your firm that wants to access it, you can get to that through AIA. There will be 1 learning unit credit for participating live today. So as long as you registered through that Zoom webinar, you'll get your 1 learning unit for being on here. If somehow you got the link from a friend, just put your name and email in the chat, so at least it's listed in there, and then we'll have you. At the bottom of your screen, probably most of you have been familiar with Zoom and used this before, but at the bottom there are 2 boxes or 2 icons. One's chat. That's a place where you can drop in and send a note to each other and say hi to a friend or whatever. But also it'd be great right now if you could just type in there and say, hey, this is Sam from Durango, or wherever you're at, so we get a sense of where people are joining from today. That would be kind of fun and helpful. In fact, I'm gonna just drop my contact info and stuff in there as well. So I'm in there and you guys can all just jump in. Alicia from Aspen, Sarah from Aspen, so we'll let that run and see where everybody's at. Then there's a second window down here for Q&A. That's where we'd like you to submit your audience questions for the panelists. And you can start anytime if you have questions in mind, or if later on a question kind of comes to mind as we're discussing, please throw that in there, so that we can participate mostly with the audience questions that come up is how we'd like this to go and make it a real community discussion. So that's kind of the logistics. We have 1 survey that we're gonna pop up just to get another sense of the audience, and we can put a survey up on the screen here. It should pop up for you guys to make a choice. And what we're looking to find out right now is who among you in the audience today are firm principals and you're in a leadership role, and who among you are associates in more of an employee role. You're looking to maintain your job and contribute. And then there's 2 other options here. You're an industry affiliate like me. I'm actually a professional affiliate. Or maybe you're something else. You just found your way in here. And we'd love to just get a sense of who's out there today. We'll give you a couple minutes to respond to that. I don't know if you saw it as well in the email Sarah sent. There was a survey inviting you to this event, and then a survey where you could jump in and give some comments to what things you were interested in hearing or how things were going for you. It was kind of interesting to me. One of the cool things was how are you holding up right now? Majority of respondents said, okay, good, great. There's still a few people obviously that are having some a little less busy than they'd like to be, but overall it was an encouraging response. The things that are keeping people going are exercise, getting outside, AIA webinars, the noon ones on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and support from their families, or also just appreciating, if something is going well, appreciating what that is. So that was kind of cool to hear, but a few people mentioned that. Wanting to learn more about communication, raise their drive for their firm, gain more market share. And then things the community can do, there were a couple really strong ones I liked. Job sharing, multiple people said, how can we share between firms? How can we collaborate with our workload or what skills that other firms have and participate with each other more, or rather than being so competitive and siloed? And then also, how do we respond to what's happening in the community, creating more affordable housing, more sustainability, responding our design to the challenges of this time that we're in. So that was kind of cool to hear. Could we show the results of that survey? Curious to see where people are at. Okay, 57% are owners and 26% enrolled. So that's good. We'll have a good mix there. A couple other people. Welcome all of you, whatever your role is. So this is good. We're going to talk about questions from both perspectives of this. And I think to start, what we'll do is just give each of the panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. And we'll start with John. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Try and make it pretty brief here. I'm John Cottle. The firm is CCY. I'm speaking to you from world headquarters in Basalt. And I've been a principal since the early 80s, so I have seen plenty of ups and downs and everything in between. We are currently about 38 people. We're pretty steady, actually, right now. We only have an office here. We had branch offices for a while, so we're just in the Roaring Fork Valley, and we do about half residential work, half commercial work, quite a bit of hospitality and club projects. And we have for quite a while had projects spread around the country, and we really like that and have worked for 2 or 3 decades on that. So we have current projects in Palm Springs, Montana, Jackson Hole, Vermont, outside of Beijing, which is fairly rare for us. But that geographic diversity, but all run out of this office, which right now we have about 5 or 6 people in it. So we're just starting to come back to the office. Most people are still working from home. We're just starting to have some person-to-person meetings. We had our first client meetings this week. So brief overview, that's us.
Awesome. Thanks, John. All right, Dave.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Kaselak with Zehren Associates. As Justin mentioned, we're here in Avon, Colorado. And we have 2 offices, one in Avon and one in Santa Barbara, but by far the bulk of our work is in the Avon office. I'm in our front conference room looking at Beaver Creek, a beautiful view of Beaver Creek, watching all the snow melt. Eagle County has been opened up for a little while now because we spiked so early. So we've had a full staff working away in the office for several weeks at least. The firm cut its teeth doing the master plan for Beaver Creek back in '83. So we've been around a little while. We're multidisciplinary, like a lot of the firms are, with the master planning and landscape architecture, the architecture and the interior design. And we have 25 people right now mixed between those 4 disciplines. And, I appreciated John's comment about geographic diversity. That's one of the things that's really kind of helping us right now. We slowed down quite a bit, 6 weeks ago or whenever it was, when people were working from home. And then the Saudi Arabia project came in, this master planning competition. So that kind of saved our bacon for 3 or 4 weeks. And then that went away because we didn't win the competition. And then last week we got a proposal for a couple of hotels in China. So if it weren't for those kind of sporadic international projects, I think we'd really be looking for other things to do. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what all panelists have to say, and I'm looking forward to some great questions from the audience.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Okay, Sarah Tiedeken.
Hi, yeah, I'm Sarah. I'm with Vertical Arts Architecture. I'm in the Steamboat office, and we also have offices in Denver and Edwards. And we are also a multidisciplinary firm, so we have the architecture, interior design. We also have a furniture store and showroom in Steamboat only. I have been at the firm for 9 years and just recently became a partner as of a year ago. So I'm kind of on that cusp of, being a younger member of the partnership over here, and a little, transitioning from management to partner has been an interesting experience. And, we've been able to stay relatively busy. I think the resort group, just working in resort towns is a little bit of a different market. So we have some commercial work, but a lot of residential is what's keeping us going right now. And then we also have a small segment of our business that does BIM consulting. So that's been a little bit of a diversification out of our Denver office that has allowed us again to span the globe, right? And, the country in some unique ways. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And Matt?
Get the mute off there. Thanks, Justin. Hi, my name is Matt Stais. I'm the principal architect with Stais Architecture and Interiors in Summit County. I started the firm in Breckenridge way back in 1995, and we just moved our practice to Frisco last year, which has been a really good change for us. We currently have a staff of 6, down from 10 people 2 years ago. We have been downsizing due to a lot of different factors, and kind of got leaner and meaner before the COVID hit, working more remotely before the COVID clamped down on us. So that's really worked out well just by chance on our part. We focus on thoughtful, sustainable design for mountain and resort communities, and we have a pretty diverse portfolio of work. We do lots of custom residential work, lots of multifamily work, workforce housing, lots of ski resort work, some commercial work, and plenty of community projects. We work nationwide, but mostly here in Colorado. And recently, I mean, we've stayed busy through the last few months. Some projects have dropped off, some other projects have come on. So we feel very fortunate to keep everybody busy, and we're just kind of keep it going day by day. That's it in a nutshell.
Great. Thank you, Matt.
Sure.
Okay, Dana.
Hi, I'm Dana Ellis. I'm calling in from Carbondale, but work in our Aspen studio. And as Sarah mentioned, I started with Rowland and Broughton in 2008. And at that point, there were, I believe, 8 employees. And the firm grew during the recession, during the 2008, 2009 economic collapse. And we right now are around 30 employees. So it was a really interesting time to start my career. I started right after graduate school, moving here, and saw kind of what an evolution during a time of sort of uncertainty looks like. And the project mix has been fluctuating between around 50% residential and then commercial hospitality. And I see sort of some trends within our own office where we're going back to some smaller scale residential, which is what we were doing when I first started. So there's a sort of similarity in the project types that are coming around now. But yeah, I think some of the first projects I did in 2008 were like a mailbox for a housing subdivision, or so-and-so needs a fence. And so obviously we've kind of grown a bit past that, but it wouldn't, I think Sarah would agree that we would probably still do that today. All design is kind of fun and interesting in those ways. And as Sarah also mentioned, I sort of started as an intern. I'm now a studio leader, which helps John and Sarah's principals essentially manage the firm, but still busy day to day with project types. And I personally focus on mainly commercial and smaller scale residential, which I think I cut my teeth during that 2008 time on those sorts of things. And I seem to be, I've seemed to stay on that course the whole way. So that's me. And Sarah, anything else to add about the firm that you'd want me to say? But okay, good.
Oh, I see the dynamic.
Sounds like that covered it. Thank you, Dana, very much. We'll jump into some audience questions as soon as they come in. We do have some things to kind of get people's brains started, but if you're in the audience and you have a question, please join us and throw some questions in. We're eager to have that participation from you. I'm going to start with John. John, what challenges has your firm been facing, and what are some actions the firm has been taking to adapt?
How long have we got?
Yeah, a couple minutes.
So, as I mentioned, we've gone through a lot of ups and downs since I've been here. One of the things that I've learned in past recessions, past challenges, is that a firm can be doing great, and by complete luck of the draw at the wrong time, really get slammed by a downturn. Or on the opposite side, you know, we all have small firms, and you get a couple of big projects at the right time, and a recession almost doesn't affect you. And so I think, and the reason I say that is that, you know, people who have been hit hard, firms that have been hit hard, you know, keep the faith. There's so much about luck and timing. So our challenges, we've actually stayed quite busy through this part of the recession, but we are a collaborative firm. We don't have any private offices. We always have worked together on tables and all of that stuff, and that's been really different. And I think it's going to stay different for a long time. So we've tried, just like a lot of people have, all of the Zoom collaboration, and we're going to draw together on the screen and this and that. It's challenging. So we actually just, as I meant, we just have been ramping up. We did the charrette on a really large hotel, ended March 13th. We called ourselves the cruise ship, the charrette team, locked in the room. And that's just really difficult to do that remotely and sequentially and all that. And that was a challenge. I think we finally got that going, but that was not ideal. And of course, every challenge on the other side has an opportunity. So how are we learning from that going forward? And we're certainly getting better at it. And at the same time for us, travel has been a really integral part of our office. Any given week in before February, a fourth of our office was somewhere traveling. And they have a lot more time now. And a lot of them are really happy about it. It's like I'm not living on airplanes. But at the same time, you know, how do you do job site visits? We're having someone drive to Montana next week to do job site visits. So that same thing. But, and of course, the challenges of culture and vibe and sharing. And again, we can come back to that because I'll bet we do come back to that. But those would be the things that come to mind for me, Justin.
Great, yeah. So collaboration being a challenge and the logistics of how you collaborate and how you get to job sites and all of those things, those digital logistics being big pieces of that. Dave, you have anything to add?
You know, I think I would echo a lot of what John said. You know, when we're all back in the office now, but when we were working from home, you know, we found it really difficult to collaborate either peer-to-peer, you know, or peer-to-intern, or management to intern rather. It was difficult to communicate. And then it was also difficult to maintain a level of camaraderie. You know, we're a fairly large office for the mountains and we're used to doing things together as an office. You know, our beer 30s and our, you know, little exercise groups. There's a group of us that do exercises in the one end of the office. And all those things were impossible to do when people were at home, so that you could see the camaraderie go down. And then once the camaraderie goes down, sometimes the motivation goes down. So, you know, those four things I thought were an early challenge when everyone was working from home. But, you know, I agree with John in another respect too. It was incumbent upon us, you know, it's more the senior staff that have been here 20, 30 years to just reassure, you know, the junior staff that, you know, these things do go in cycles. You know, we've seen 9/11 and we've seen the Great Recession. We saw 2001. And eventually, you know, people need to recreate and they need to eat at restaurants and they want to ski on our ski mountains. And so those projects will come back. I think the biggest challenge for, you know, I know this is the next question, but I think the biggest challenge for staff is just that uncertainty. You know, we've really never gone through a worldwide pandemic before. And is this thing going to last a couple of months? Is it going to last a couple of years? You know, what industries besides hospitality are going to get hit next? So those are, I think those have been the big challenges that I've seen.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm thinking as I listen to both of you just about how the uncertainty presents itself as kind of the next thing. You're in the middle of dealing with your current challenges, but as you're trying to think ahead and you don't know in the crystal ball what the next challenge will be, or if this is going to be a giant recession or a second wave or what's coming, how do you plan with some agility to be adaptive to what's coming? And I'll give you that one, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. That you nailed it. I mean, we always have challenges, but the big difference is right now that I think the unknown is really amplified because, you know, I'm celebrating my 25th year in business this year, and we're always adapting. We're always adapting to a changing market and new technologies, changing society, changing communities locally. And you have to adapt to be a successful small business, right? We all adapt. But in 2020, the future of, you know, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 48 months is literally impossible to predict based on the last 3 to 6 months due to the COVID and, you know, the impacts on the economy and what changes are going to stick. How is our way of life going to change? I'm particularly concerned with travel restaurants, and skiing because I love doing all those things. So we don't know. We'll know. We should get back together in 2023 and see how it all went. But we don't know now. So at our firm, we've kind of fallen back on what we consider to be our strength, which is our people, our experience, and our listening skills. Because in order to adapt, you really need to listen, you need to communicate, you need to support each other within the firm, and really all your professional and personal contacts. Since the shutdown, as Sarah knows, I've spent a lot of time connecting and reconnecting with people professionally as well as personal friends and families to make sure they're doing okay. And so then when I'm having a tough time, I can call up Sarah Broughton and talk to her, and it makes me feel better listening to her problems. And we can all stay connected, So I talk with a lot of people, and my takeaway is to stay in the moment. We don't need to worry about 2023 right now. Let's focus on 2020. Don't worry about things outside of your control. Instead, put your energy towards things you can do right now, not worrying about 6 months from now, even though we do. And, humans are an adaptable species. We'll figure out how to deal with whatever this new normal is going to be. And especially as architects and designers, we're going to help shape that future. And I think that's a great opportunity. I guess I'm relentlessly optimistic, but I like to think that there are going to be opportunities coming out of this to make things better. That's my hope.
Awesome. Gosh, that was so encouraging. I like it. Well, I was thinking about the survey. That was one of the big things a number of people said one of the things they hoped to gain from this was wisdom and patience. And that sounds like that's something that you've achieved and try to share with your team, which is spectacular.
Yeah, well, with a couple teenage daughters in my house, I know a lot about patience, and the work part's the easy part of my day. So it's all good.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, Sarah, I have a question for you. So you're transitioning from a associate level into a management role now and principal role. In that kind of middle level where you are dependent on your supervisors to help grow the firm and meet the firm's goals, and also you're looking at all of your subordinates and trying to give them encouragement and help stay positive. How do you handle that balance and walk both sides of that line?
Yeah, that is kind of an interesting transition, because you do understand like how it's frustrating to not be in the know. And then once you are in the know, you're like, oh man, like now I'm in the know on all this stuff. And it's like, okay, like here, I have to deal with all this stuff, and I think that we're all, like you said, we're all small firms, and you don't want to like paint a rosy picture that doesn't exist, but you also don't need to, lie or whatever. And I think it's just encouraging people on your team, like, we have you here for a reason, we care about you, and we're all going to get through this together. And we've been lucky, we're a little lean right now, and so we're really busy right now. Actually, it's almost the opposite, where it's scary busy, and not scary busy, but you're asking a lot of people. And I think just being open and honest, like, hey, we're gonna float through this, and if more work comes in, we'll figure it out, and figure out how to get people on staff when we need them. We don't want to overcommit, and trying to be open as much as you can and encourage people to come to you when they're feeling a little bit in distress. I think because you're having a smaller team, you're asking people to do stuff that they may not be 100% comfortable with. They feel like they've never done it before, or because we're multidisciplinary, we're having one of our BIM tech guys who usually just drafts help do furniture layouts or something, and they're sort of like, what? And you're like, it'll be fine, like, we'll just work through it together, and just encourage people to learn new skills, and that you get it. It's out of their comfort zone. But I think being on that other side recently, you can understand how it can be frustrating to just feel like you're on this island as an employee. So trying to be more down to earth and as honest as you can be, I think people have appreciated that.
Yeah, awesome. I would agree with that. I was in a similar role in the 2008 recession, and it was an interesting balance. Like you said, being in the know was a big almost burden and to kind of shield your people from that, but at the same time encourage them was an interesting challenge. It really helps a lot to know that they're knowing whatever they can do to help their team, you know, keep going and keep moving forward, gives them a place in the firm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dana, anything to add to that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think something Matt said, you know, focusing on kind of what you can do now is really important. And I think, you know, when business is humming along and things are maybe less tumultuous, right? Like how it was, I don't know, 4 months ago, you know, there were systems in place, and I think people felt very comfortable coming to work each day, understanding what they were doing. And there was this kind of clarity of like, and now I do this task, and now I do this task. And I'd say the biggest difference right now, I think the uncertainty and kind of the lower morale, so to speak, you know, paralyzes some people, and it makes it harder for them to see that next step, even if it's as simple as, and now you print this, or now you save it, like little things, like simple things. And so the biggest thing I've been trying to focus on with teammates and colleagues is, you know, maybe for you at this moment, it's really just press save and feel good about that. But what's going to make this possibly fulfilling, if we want to think in a more optimistic way, is that, you know, looking at kind of the challenge of the stress or the working from home, or the, you know, oh, I need to be in meetings more because we need to communicate more, and looking at all of these things and challenging them and saying, okay, like, we're trying to do business as usual right now with all these other constraints. How do we actually make it better? You know, I think John said, you know, that the future of office life is going to look probably a little different for longer than even a pandemic, because people are going to sort of figure out ways to work in different and new ways. Well, then let's change the systems and let's get ahead of that and not keep trying to sort of fight a system that might be making it counterproductive. So some days it's like, okay, no, just focus on saving the documents that need to be saved and just feel good about that. And then other days it's like, no, okay, how can you actually be doing this better? And the world is changing. It's changing in a faster way. I think I never thought that was possible, but it's changing in a faster way right now than any of us has experienced. And I hope to God this is like kind of the biggest and fastest shifts we'll experience in our lifetimes, but probably not. So get comfortable with that and sort of figure out like, okay, how do I become a better professional, a better person, you know, whatever, a better, you know, citizen of humanity, whatever you need to do to kind of make yourself want to get up and do these things. Yeah, so that I approach it from those different sides, you know, like sometimes I'm like, just write the email. Just, that's all you got. Send the one thing, like.
Do the next day. Keep going.
Just keep going.
Awesome, thank you. Well, there's a lot of things that people are kind of stressed about, like energetically, the disruption of where's your work environment, the disruption of some uncertainty is kind of rough. And for some people, the news cycle and the division of the country is a big thing. And now we've got this whole new message of what's happening with Black Lives Matter, and a big clear message for that kind of raises all of our ears to think how we can contribute to solutions. So I'm going to go to John with this question that we had. What changes can a Western Colorado small firm undertake to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion in the profession and within the community?
A big one too, Justin. So obviously we have a disadvantage being in a small town in the Western Slope with how isolated we are from so many of the problems that face our larger society. And so I have absolutely no silver what here, but I think one of the joys of being in an office with a group of really engaged, energetic, smart people is that you learn from the energetic, smart, engaged people. And you know, again, I don't have any magic bullet, but I know when we have our internal meetings, whether it's a leadership meeting, whether it's an all office meeting, whether it's something like somebody says, are we doing X or Y? It's like, I'm not sure. Maybe we should. And again, we have to adapt what we can adapt and move in a better direction. Certainly with equality, whether it's gender equality, race equality, you know, the finances obviously of our valleys, of the Roaring Fork Valley in particular, is really skewed. So we, you know, on a really small scale, we try and do pro bono work whenever we can, especially if it's for affordable housing. We try and be affiliated with that. I think one of the interesting dynamics in a recession is that in general, architects have been trained to be thoroughbreds, you know, and run really fast and really hard and be great elitists in some sense. And really, I've always thought that the best part of architectural training is to be creative problem solvers. It's not about sculpture, in my opinion. It's not about form. It's about, here's an issue and a problem. We're smart, creative people. How can we engage with this problem and be part of the solution? And I think architects are terrific at that, if they will allow themselves to acknowledge that that's a really valid problem instead of making great sculpture, for instance.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's true. And I'm wondering how much is taking the creativity and thoughtfulness to try and find those new directions when you're busy in a situation kind of normal, in your comfort zone of the normal year that maybe 2019 was. So maybe there's more time to think about it, but there's also less disruption. So I'm going to go to Dave and say, Dave, how much does the disruption present new or bigger opportunities to make shifts towards any kind of diversity, inclusion themes for your firm?
You know, I was born in Korea, Justin, so our firm automatically gets 1 point for that. And then on the, you know, on the other side of that, you know, I echo, you know, what John said earlier about, you know, the younger people in the office really bringing fresh blood and fresh points of view. That's definitely appreciated. You know, I think it's good for the old school to learn from the new school, and it's helpful all the time. And that's why we try to always keep fresh blood in the office. As far as, you know, how this particular downturn has helped us, you know, react to that, I'd say one thing that we appreciate is when you do work on international projects, which we're focused on now because of the local downturn, even though the entire world honestly is affected. You do learn an appreciation for different cultures, you know, whether it's China or the Argentines or the Saudis. And, you know, obviously they don't have, you know, some of the strengths that Americans have in terms of how we view certain things. But it's still really beneficial to get a different perspective on how you look at the world and how you look at architecture and how you look at, you know, how you treat people within the workforce. You know, I will say that during normal times, you know, when we're hiring, we are very good about trying to keep a balance between men and women in the office, because, you know, we think it's really important to get that different dynamic and to get those different points of view from both sides. But other than that, you know, it is difficult in the mountains, like we alluded to earlier. I mean, this is a pretty, you know, we're a pretty insulated society up here, honestly. And so you can just do your best to, you know, try to keep those things in mind, appreciate other cultures, you know, the balance between men and women. You know, maybe there's an opportunity to do a forum of, you know, women architects in, you know, Western Colorado, or, you know, whatever you wanted to do similar to that. So those are the things that, you know, we think about.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. I think that's all very appropriate. I'm thinking about our valley, and I don't have a solution for it, but in the Roaring Fork Valley, we do have a really large Latino population. And as the Dreamers generation is coming through high school, if there's opportunities to invite them into new careers and career fair, things like that, I think that's maybe one direction we can all try to look. But you're all very correct. In our communities, we can only hire from the pool of people that are around us. We did have a question that came in. So this is from Leisha in the audience. As we come out of this COVID time and embrace our new normal, how can the architecture community help lead a green recovery in terms of building design, interiors, and construction practices? I'm going to give this one to Sarah.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's, you know, I've seen all these people posting like, well, don't forget to be green. And then like the next image is like all these discarded gloves and masks like floating in the ocean. It's disgusting. You know, it's like all hell is broken loose and no one cares about anything except the COVID anymore. And so I think the benefit of where we are now relative to March is I think we're starting to settle into the idea that this isn't going away anytime soon. And so I feel this regulation a little bit. I mean, I think people are trying to forget about it, but ultimately society is going to have to come to terms with the fact that this could be going on for a time and this isn't the only issue that we need to focus on. And so I think this comes back to kind of that everything going on right now is like resettling your ideals, and we get so busy in what you're working on and what your clients are pushing for, and you almost, I don't want to say lost, but you know, I'm not that, I'm like a decade out of college, right? Coming out of college, you're just so optimistic. I'm going to change the world. And my thesis project was this affordable housing thing that was so green and net zero and perfect, and it's the imaginary world. And then you start working and you try and maintain that optimism, but you work in society and these are the projects you're giving and the clients, and you're trying to make a business work. And so it's trying to just refocus yourself and find that kind of altruistic optimism again, and really try and resettle like what is important in my life and our world. And I think this is everything we just talked about, equality and sustainability, and really trying to come back to those core values that we all have and sometimes can get pushed aside for other project agendas. And you know, we're all trying to balance a real business here. But I think trying to take that opportunity to internally meet as a company and engage all the employees and really try and take some downtime to come up with new processes on sustainability and connect with other members and community, you know, like yourself, like AIA affiliate groups. And there's so many interesting, you know, technologies now, and just take this time to think outside the box and reinvigorate your company back to, you know, your best self, I guess. And I think that this is a time to really prioritize that again.
Right. Oh yeah. I feel like I can appreciate that. Whenever we're working within like all of the things that we care about, we're working towards our best self and our best goals. It's really encouraging, and that keeps us motivated to keep moving forward, which I think is important. And that kind of connects to a new question I'm going to ask Dana. Looking at just the stress and a personal level, not as a firm or as an associate, but how do you see for yourself that you're most effective at maintaining your positivity?
Most effective.
Or what feels the best? What works?
Say that again?
Or to say it another way, what works to feel good? How do you stay feeling good in the face of everything going on?
Well, I wake up every morning and I decide that I'm going to have a good day every day. And that's honest to God the answer. It's you know, I've never read The Power of Positive Thinking. But I imagine that that's probably what it's about. But it's that idea that I get to make very little in terms of the choices that are affecting my life right now. I'm not in control of that many of them. But one that I am is that I get to wake up and decide that I'm going to work hard, that I'm going to be a good mom, that I'm going to be a good partner, that I'll tend to my garden and not let it get overgrown by weeds, that I'll, you know, reach out to a client and make them feel special, that I've communicated with all my teammates and no one's left hanging. And I don't necessarily have done excellent work, but I've done kind of the things that have felt good. I go to sleep without being like, oh, I forgot to feed the cat today. Like, I try and just do the simple things, but it all starts with waking up and just saying, okay, I am going to try my hardest today. And I do that every single day. And I make it a conscious thing, and it's usually accompanied by coffee and, you know, but yeah, I mean, honest to God, I've been trying to, like, you know, tell some of the teammates who've been struggling a little harder, like, you guys get to decide how you feel about this. You can decide to be mad. You can decide to, you know, be super psyched, but you don't let anybody else kind of control your feelings or your reactions. And sometimes it is right. It's good to get angry at things. And we're seeing right now, I think, a lot of turmoil that deserves strong responses, but how you choose to kind of approach those things, to me, is within your control. And I've just been banking on that because I feel like I can't predict anything at all. So that's been big for me.
Hey, Justin, can I add to that?
Yeah, please.
You know, thank goodness we live in Colorado, right? I mean, yeah. What a great thing to be able to go, you know, after work, even if it's a hard day at work, and just outside your backyard, you know, do a great hike with your dog, or go down to the river and just listen to the river. Or at night, you know, look at our clean sky that you don't get in other countries because they're so polluted. And, you know, I appreciated Dana's comment earlier about how you can take the smallest tasks and they can be really exciting design projects the way they used to be when you were in college. You know, we're working on this little entry piece for a mine in Park City. You know, they want this to educate people about the mine and, you know, talk about the history of that mine portal. And when we were busy, you know, we probably wouldn't have appreciated that project as much as we do now. And now we're extra focused on, you know, creating this beautiful little gem of a mine portal and putting probably a lot more thought into it than, you know, maybe we would have 3 months ago. So I love the idea of just, you know, taking any little design problem, whether it's the mailbox or the fence or a bus stop or a mine portal, and really extracting as much enjoyment as you can from it and being as creative as you can. If you break the budget, you break the budget. I mean, nowadays, you know, it's not a big deal. So I think those are great ways to cope.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Justin, if we could add and maybe tie a couple things together. Dana, I really appreciated your observation that really fundamentally it's up to us to try and make decisions and then support each other when we are having trouble making decisions that can see the good in the world and all that. But I wanted to go back also to the question about sustainability. A little historical perspective from our standpoint. In 2006 and 2007, we had a slew of really strong, sustainable, high-minded, they were really fantastic projects. And it was really encouraging. 2008 hit, everything was the bug on the windshield. And they, not only did those projects went away, but the mindset to us went away for a long time, just in terms of everyone focusing on survival. Just because that happened then doesn't mean it's going to happen now. It's a different world. But I think, I know within our firm, we are really doubling down on our sustainability initiatives. And that is one thing that we are really committed to coming out of this in a different place than we went into it. But maybe just as a cautionary word to us, the greater us, is that if this recession lingers, if it gets harder and harder, it gets harder for people to justify it or can. And so I guess just kind of being aware of that and maybe prepared for that to make sure that we've doubled down on our I'm not going to say sales, you know, the facts and the ramifications of the facts and the emotion of the facts, so that we can be more convincing to lead our clients, to bring them along where we would like to go. Because it could get rough again in a year or so.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Do any of you guys have questions for each other? Anything that's kind of come to your minds you want to ask each other?
I have another observation, if it's okay.
Please.
In 2008, putting a little, again, historical perspective, we lost 86% of our work in 45 days. We got slaughtered.
Whoa.
It was a really, really, really horrible time. And we became a much smaller firm, and everyone was working on reduced wages. Everyone was answering phones and doing landscaping and cleaning the office and all of that. And from that perspective, it appeared like it was never going to end. I in one of our little State of the Union meetings at, I don't know, 2009 or 2010, and we were back to 18 people, I think. And I just said, folks, we're never going to be a 30-person firm again. I mean, it's just never going to happen. There's not it. And 2 years later, we were 34, 36 people. We've done, I think, some of the best work we've ever had the opportunity to do since then. And so it's hard to make predictions in really weird times, and we're in really weird times. So clearly things can get better. But then number two, again, sort of looking from that past. Some of the toughest times for us financially, and I think like the number of foreclosures and all that, was more like 2011 or 12. So again, the sort of business planning for business owners and all of that is as it drags on a bit. There's this massive disruption that we've been through. But it's just to be aware, to continue to be lean and smart and nimble, because a year from now may be the hardest part of this whole thing. And again, I hope I'm wrong. But that's my lens, is that if for instance, the lending institutions start to get really tight on money, if, you know, et cetera, then it can cascade a little wider. And that's not, by the way, a pessimistic view of the world. It's just, how should we help our staffs understand that it could be a long road, and again, it could be a good road. There's lots of positives in it, but to stay vigilant, or maybe longer than we would hope we have to.
So what was the biggest, I think, strategy that you had to survive that time that was the tightest time and you lost that much of your project load?
Oh God, get to tomorrow. Some guy asked me, I was at an Urban Land Institute meeting, and he said, you know, well, what are you doing about your backlog? And I said, I think our backlog is 8 hours, you know. I mean, literally, and I kind of made a joke, but it wasn't a joke. It was just, you know, we're all in it together. We're hopefully, we're trying to keep the doors open, because if the doors are open, then we can keep going forward and do the things we like to do. And so that was it. That was the strategy. Try and show up tomorrow.
I remember those times, John. We went from, I mean, we're similar to you guys. We went from like 35 down to 12 people, and everyone was nervously, you know, looking at the other person, trying to decide who's going to be next.
Oh, it was all.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for these times, you know, a lot of times the junior staff just don't know what they can do to help the office during these kind of slow times. So I think, you know, it's really helpful to sit down with them, you know, kind of go through your mind, what are all the things that we said we were going to do if we had time, and we never had time? Well, now we have time. You know, before we went live, we were talking about how now our archiving unit is the cleanest it's been in 20 years. Our sample room is like shiny and new almost. We're almost caught up with all our marketing, which is almost never happens. And so, you know, if you don't, you know, if times continue to be slow, it's really incumbent, I think, on the junior staff to, you know, make yourself indispensable, be that utility infielder, sit down with management, you know, what have we always wanted to do but couldn't do it, and how can I help do that? And then make sure you have the follow through, because coming up with the ideas doesn't solve all the problems. So yeah, so if they can make themselves experts, then, you know, they'll stick around your firm for a long time.
Yeah, that's great advice. I have a couple more questions lined up, but I saw Sarah Broughton, you had something you wanted to jump in?
I'll go after
Okay.
the questions.
Great, okay. So Sarah Tiedeken, at the other side of this contrast, you're very busy right now. Is your firm or is anybody on here saying no to work at the moment? Or are there bad projects that you want to avoid, or are you cautiously taking every project you can receive?
I feel like we're still cautiously taking the projects, right? And I think it sort of alludes to what John said earlier, is it's like, well, if all 4 of these projects that we have proposals come in, you know, you have all these proposals floating, then we're going to be way too busy, you know, and recruiting in a market like these mountain towns isn't always easy to find staff, you know, and so I think it's just trying to be optimistic that if you get the work, you can find the people who will work on it with you, you know, like with the Zoom and the remote culture, I think it might be easier even in these more remote locations to onboard people, you know, into the Denver office who will work on your projects in Steamboat, or, you know, pull people on a consultant basis for a few months at a minimum to help them and help you, and think a little bit more on your feet as far as how you can keep these projects going, but not overcommit to staffing, maybe, if that's the right way to say it. So we're definitely, you know, wearily floating out for more work, and just going to have to deal with it if it all comes in, which would be a great problem, you know. And I think it's hard to say no to jobs, just back to those little jobs that you want to work on and create special things for people, and just trying to, again, utilize staff in ways that they maybe haven't ever done before. And people so far have been willing to take on the challenges of different types of projects. So we, I mean, really haven't been passing on opportunities that we feel like are still, you know, maybe not usually in our wheelhouse, I guess, if that's the way to say it.
Yeah. How about the rest of you? Anybody saying no to work right now?
Oh yeah, we're saying no to work. That doesn't fit our schedule, or there's plenty of people who want us to work for free. We try not to do that much unless it's a community project. There's always people out there with unrealistic budgets, you know, trying to get a $3 million project for $1.5 million. And, you know, so we're trying to be judicious about the projects that we entertain.
That's why you've been in business for 25 years.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, Justin, can I ask a question that wasn't on our sheets here?
Of course, please.
I just want to get, you know, other people's points of view on, to see if you had the same thoughts that I did. But even before the COVID hit, we were worried in our office, at least I was, that there might be another downturn just because construction costs had gotten so crazy. I feel like the last year of our existence, we've been doing so much value engineering, just trying to get projects within budget, because the subcontractor market has just, you know, gone through the roof. And I almost feel like if it hadn't been for COVID, you know, we would have a recession for some other reason, you know, just being priced out of being able to ever build anything. And we almost can't build the quality of townhome, you know, that we would have sought 10 years ago or something like that, because it's just become so expensive. So I didn't know if the rest of you saw that in your markets, or if the construction costs were a little more normal.
not normal?
No, I feel like I've spent, prior to this, I feel like the last year of my life was in VE processes.
Yeah.
And to the point where it's interesting, I had never thought about that being the source of the downturn, like that would cause it, but it really was the source of, I think, a problem we were seeing with work that psychologically you're like, but you should be able to get this, and how to be an advocate for clients in that way was challenging. And I think it wasn't just in our valleys. I think, you know, I remember moving here and hearing this idea of the mountain tax, but I think it wasn't just construction. I think it was probably the economy had gotten so inflated to the point where things were actually costing more. And so to make profits, which as business owners you want to do, it was just getting harder and harder and harder. But to me, it was a bigger issue of value, of that what they were getting for that amount felt so, and still, I mean, that hasn't changed. I don't know, the conversations on job sites I'm having now is general contractors, you know, had a month off, let's say, or a month and a half, and they're like, we're busier than ever. And we can't keep track, and we can't get subs lined up. So that's not changing. There's not been a downturn as far as I've seen. I'm in a VE exercise right now on a residence, and it's where sometimes it might be, well, the client has an unrealistic expectation. Right now, I'm like, wait a minute. What if the market right now is actually causing not an unrealistic expectation? Their expectation is valid, but the pricing is so off reality. I don't have a solution to that, but I feel like that's been a big struggle for us right now, is trying to advocate for clients for what we really think they should be able to get, but it's been tough. So yeah, but I think we've always have been talking about, okay, when we know something's coming. I don't think anyone anticipated it to be like the way it is, but yeah, I had never thought about that being like a source of the downturn.
Yeah, that's interesting. John on chat jumped in from the Vail Valley, said he completely agrees that the cost of construction is a bigger problem than COVID currently.
Yeah, Justin, if I could jump in,
Please.
I feel like, yeah, I mean, for the last few years, I mean, if you look at the stock market and other things, the macro factors, and we were in a, 8 or 9 or 10 year expansion. And it was one of the longest on record, as I recall. And, you know, those things, it's cyclical. That stuff comes to an end. It came to a pretty hard stop for 3 months, but I agree with what Dana was saying, that I actually spoke with the town engineer in Breckenridge a few months ago, hoping for better pricing. And she said, you know, part of the issue is that, you know, a lot of the construction workers are seasonal, and they all had to leave. I mean, she thought that there's a possibility that labor costs might actually go up. And I mean, nobody wants to hear that. So I stopped. I hung up the phone. I stopped talking to her. But people call me often and say, hey, we want the COVID discount, and we think that construction costs are going to go down, but we haven't seen that locally. But I think that there are obviously a lot of factors on the macro level, and we were kind of due for a turn, I think.
Yeah. Well, if we're not quite there yet, I guess it's still down the road ahead of us.
So I think they have to get through I think the contractors, once they get through their current backlog, I think that's when you might see, you know, a COVID discount later. Because the developers we're working with are expecting the same thing. We just got pricing last week, and they're hoping for the COVID discount, but there was none to be found. So.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got another question that came in the Q&A, and I'm just going to throw this one up and see who wants to take it. Do the panelists think that they can sponsor the inclusion of minorities in the profession's pipeline? Over 10% of the workforce in the Western Slope are minority. However, less than 1% are in our profession. So how can we include them into the profession's pipeline and bring them in? And this is from Ignacia. Who wants to take that one?
Well, I think what you were saying earlier, Justin, about, there's so many young up and coming, students, and how can we empower people who are interested in the field to learn a little bit more about it prior to, we all know it's like a long, arduous road from like for wanting to maybe become an architect to becoming one and working in a firm. And how can we, reach out to schools and even do, like adjunct teaching or workshops at local schools and helping empower, any of those minorities in town to feel like they can have an input in this profession. I know I saw Adam Wright was on here. He's in Steamboat, and we used to do these like architecture month events all around town to get people excited about the profession, like local sketching things or open houses, and kind of lowering the veil on the profession and, hopefully making it seem more inclusive to people who maybe haven't ever, met someone who's an architect or know about it, or just kind of trying to make it a little bit more, I don't know, less scary or something. Because it's like a lot of architecture offices aren't just the place where people would feel comfortable just coming in and learning more. So it might be on us to put ourselves out there and invite them in.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, Sarah. We had the chance this past summer, or no, I guess it was last fall, to sponsor a student from Battle Mountain High School. And that high school is probably, half Latino. And she was a Latina, and, she came and toured our office all day and sat with different people, watched someone do Revit, watched someone attend a construction meeting. We took her to some active job sites, and she was just blown away and inspired by what architects do. She's looking up this, steel building going up in the air. And so I think you're right. If you can reach out to the local communities and hit those high schools, you can really inspire people that you may never have thought you could before.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know in our valley, in the Roaring Fork Valley, we have a career fair in Glenwood that the whole schools from Aspen to Glenwood come to. And we were at that last year, and I think there were 3 or 4 different firms from construction and architecture, which was cool to see. But we were a small segment of a big gymnasium full of people. So need Architecture Row just lined up in there. This is actually a perfect segue. I'm going to throw a survey question up. I'll come back to you, Dana. But I had a survey that I wanted to ask about events. And if we can put this next survey up, it's part of my role as a volunteer is helping plan events for the Western Slope. And part of what we could do is more public outreach, creating events for community visibility and things like that. And among other things that are more networking and for us. So can we get that survey up and we'll let the audience participate? And while that's popping up, actually, go ahead, Dana, and what you were going to say.
Yeah, I think Sarah, really nailed it with this idea that you've got to create the invitation with the sort of idea of inclusion. It's not about an interested student finding you. I think that's where sometimes we've been able to sort of sit back and, well, no one's reached out and things like that. But I think at this junction, I think it's about putting the invitation out there and working hard to make that outreach meaningful. I've been thinking just a ton about this, even as a kid. For me, I grew up in a city and we didn't have career fairs per se, but I was a Girl Scout and got to do like a job shadowing thing. And I went with a guy who was like a landscaper on a golf course. And he was doing all these little like construction projects. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, and I would have never been exposed to that. My dad was in manufacturing and my mom was a dental hygienist. I mean, there was like no architecture avenue, but this like maintenance guy on a golf course building a shed out of prefab steel panels was like super interesting. And I got invited to do that. And there was no way as a kid I would have done that. So I think there's this idea that you've got to kind of create the invitation first and not just like put it out there, but actually work hard to get kids involved in it. Especially today, I think, it's harder to get kids kind of out and even more so with, you know, social distancing and things like that. So creating ways and getting creative. And I think that's where we have a big opportunity here on, you know, the Western Colorado front to make a meaningful impact, because we do pretty amazing work for just where we are and for how big we are. So I see a lot of opportunity with this, but I do think it really could be driven by AIA as kind of a good vehicle and way to get things out there in our different communities.
You know, if I could add to that, Dana, I think you made a great point. We've had high school interns in our office on and off for forever and really enjoyed them. We have generally, someone has known somebody or somebody contacts us and say, oh yeah, great, we invite them in, but we don't actively seek to make the connection with the school. And that's a completely different thing. And I think that's a great point and something we need to work on.
Yes, second that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming into where we need to wrap up given time. And good, we just closed the survey, so here's our results. Oh good, looks like this has been a good event for people and they'd like to do another one. And Sarah and I can talk about planning another one in a few months and try and make this a regular thing. And we'll take these comments and try and plan some other events and keep things active to benefit each other. It looks like the community one was strong too, and we'll try and come up with ideas. If anybody has ideas in the audience and wants to email them to me, again, my contact info is at the top of the chat. You can just scroll up and grab my email. We had one last comment that came in that's more of a comment than a question, so I'll read this real quick. Having taught in high school in the past, I learned that the students need to understand that architecture is an opportunity for their future, but they need a local education like CMC to assist them in getting started, and then be able to go to Denver or Boulder for continuing school. You need to give them the full picture. I've taught very talented Latinos and none of them have been able to make it a reality through those challenges of education. Money is a big deal and what stops them in their tracks. Any last solutions or thoughts to that as we wrap up?
I mean, I'm curious about the opportunity. You know, AIA and NCARB, you know, have created different methods for becoming a licensed architect, right? I mean, I see a huge value in a traditional architectural education, but with the right mentorship and job opportunities, I think that there's other paths for people to find an avenue into architecture without a traditional means. And thinking about vocational CAD drafting schools and how a person like that can become of immediate value to a firm and then start to learn and be creative. And you know, there's a lot of means into this profession that don't involve spending $100,000 on a degree, you know, and that's not the reality that a lot of people have the option to do. And I think really thinking outside the box and providing that vision for hard workers, that there's different means to this end, you know? Yeah,
you're right. That's great advice.
I have two things to add that are topical to this. Learned today in our board meeting, the dean of CU Denver sits on the board as well, and he said that David Triba just in the past few weeks set up a scholarship fund for minorities to attend CU architecture. So there is an opportunity there for firms to contribute. You know, any amount is appreciated. So thought that was really great. Also just asking, I know that we personally within our firm, we're starting a JEDI program and really getting deliberate about some of the things that we're talking about right now. Is that something that you guys would find interesting if we had smaller panels on this or just think tanks on how we collectively in the West can become a lot more proactive? Even we're throwing around some really great ideas today. Is that something that would be of interest to have these brain trusts? And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Sure.
That's
Cool.
awesome. That's great. Well, does anybody have any closing thoughts as we come into our wrap up? We're just about out of time.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh,
Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Let's do it again.
this was super fun. We'd love to do it again.
Although
Yeah,
I would vote
thank
for the
you.
virtual happy hour for sure.
Yeah, I
We
like
could
that
combine
idea.
them. there's no reason we couldn't combine this.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay,
Thanks.
excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. Did you have any last thing, Sarah?
No, just so appreciative of everyone's time. Thank you, and stay strong, stay positive, and keep the faith.
Yeah, hope is stronger than fear. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Bye.